Welcome to episode 102 of the Hard Truth About B2B E-commerce. I'm your co-host Isaiah Bollinger, and I'm back with Tim after. Actually, we only took a week off, right?
We only had 1 week off, so we're rocking. So hey, everybody, Tim Peterson here again. Really happy to be here for 102. I'm going to continue our tradition of giving some shout outs. I have a few names of folks who tell me that they listen to the podcast and have been very happy to talk about it. I'm also going to bring up somebody I brought up before the podcast because she has listened to episodes. So Camille Popawell, if you're listening right now, I love you. You're wonderful. Great to hear that you're listening to our podcast. Also, Michael Brown, Liz Vonderhaar, Tiffany Benson, and Sarah Sokolowski. Thank you for continuing to listen to our podcast. Tell all your friends. Come join the party. And now, I'm going to pause just for a moment to insert our sponsor mentions, then I'll throw it back to Isaiah to introduce our guest today. So let me just pause for a moment. Balance is a B2B e-commerce payment solution that works well for you and for your buyers. It offers a seamless one-click checkout for almost any payment method, including ACH, wire, checks, cards, even terms. It's used by leaders in B2B e-commerce, and it's as easy as buying a shirt from Amazon. Check them out at getbalance.com. Book a session and tell them what your needs are. They are the first dedicated payment platform for B2B e-commerce, 100% tailored to your needs. Thanks again to our sponsor, Balance. Isaiah, who do we have on deck today?
Yeah, I'm excited to introduce Lance Owide. I hope I'm not butchering the last name from BigCommerce, head of the B2B practice at BigCommerce, who's really kind of helping, supercharge B2B at BigCommerce. And we met finally in person at the last B2B conference, so it's kind of overdue, I think, to have you on. So.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I've been a listener for a while. I've never got a shout out, but maybe one day. But I've been a listener for a while. I love the pod, so thank you guys so much for having me on and inviting me on. I didn't quite make episode 100, but as we just said, maybe I'll make episode 200.
We'll invite you back.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got involved into e-commerce, and then what made you take this job at B2B. Why B2B?
Yeah, sure. You have a lot of fantastic B2B e-commerce practitioners on, and I have some background, but I don't have the 20 years of history that many do. My background's a little bit different. I started life in finance, of all things, and I spent 4 years at UBS Investment Bank, kind of part of a sales and trading graduate. I wasn't a trader or a salesperson. I actually sold software for the bank, business to business, helping some of the world's largest asset managers, pension funds manage their portfolios, billions and billions of dollars. And that's where I kind of caught the bug for building and selling technology to businesses. In particular,
I think when you say finance, people assume you're like a banker. So that's good background because it's actually not that different, right? You're selling technology to other businesses, right?
Exactly. I may have gone to the dark side for a little bit after that. So the team I was in actually got bought, interestingly enough, and the transition wasn't fantastic. And so I looked for other opportunities, and I wanted to get some experience in M&A. It was an area I was interested in. So I joined Apollo, which is one of the third largest PE firms in the world. It's very, very large, huge PE practice. But I joined a much smaller team there. I was employee number 6, effectively building out their European insurance business. Apollo has an incredible American insurance business, and we were replicating that in the US, and I was there for 4 years, and we kind of 10x'd everything, 10x revenue, 10x assets, did some huge deals. Never worked harder in my life. Had more screaming matches with colleagues, and I really learned kind of how to graft, but also how to solve problems. But I wanted to get back to technology and building technology that helps solve those customer problems. So I kind of had a foray myself. I built an app kind of for organizing events, actually think like Calendly for friends, Fortunately, we didn't really get that off the ground. I still think it's a fantastic idea.
Friendly? What was it called? What was
Planner. It was called Planner.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay.
Yeah, PLANR, Planner.
Mm-hmm.
Still own the domain. It's still up there. You can go and check it out if anyone is interested. But then a very good friend of mine introduced me to BigCommerce. And at the point I was introduced, they were 2 months away from acquiring Feedonomics. And I just loved the company from the minute I got introduced. I loved the people and the mission. BigCommerce was all about democratizing e-commerce. They're not trying to build a monolith. They weren't trying to do everything, but allowing businesses, merchants, retailers, manufacturers, distributors to use the best-in-class technologies across the board. And I really liked that kind of open ecosystem. So I joined BigCommerce, what's about 2.5 years ago now, just before we closed the Feedonomics deal. And for anyone who isn't familiar with Feedonomics, it's the best technology platform out there for syndicating product data to marketplaces and to ad channels and to distributors as well for those kind of manufacturers out there. They have 30% of the top 1,000 internet retailers as customers. Think like Allbirds and Sonos and Samsung and Dell. Fantastic names, incredible team, incredible people. And we closed that acquisition, and I spent a fair bit of time working with that team and getting them up to speed on BigCommerce. And we started to look at, what's the next biggest opportunity? And it was clearly B2B. And, I think the numbers sort of speak for themselves when you start to look at the B2B market. And we can probably back and forth about the exacts, but, this is a couple of years ago now, but, 40% of enterprise B2B merchants using custom platforms or on some kind of open source. And so, we kind of stood back and said, well, 50% of this market is using some kind of antiquated platform that isn't going to meet their requirements into the future. This is where we're going to double down. And personally, this is exciting. We have an opportunity here to build some really fantastic technology that's going to drive B2B e-commerce into the future. And BigCommerce as a platform, we were having a lot of success with B2B merchants anyway, just because of the way we had built the platform. It's open with very, very strong and robust APIs, which is what a manufacturer distributor, needs and relies on to do their business. And so in 2021, we launched our B2B edition, which was kind of that next level B2B functionality. Think invoicing, quoting, buyer approval workflows. And it was incredible timing. It was, pandemic had hit, B2B businesses sales teams couldn't interact in person, and everything was moving online. And it just, we really hit the crest of that wave. And we've continued to build on that project into the future. And today I'm the general manager of B2B. I'm responsible for the success of that program. And we're just taking it from kind of strength to strength.
I'm gonna just throw a couple things out there. So first of all, I want to mention Apollo. Apollo actually acquired one of the companies where I was formerly head of business intelligence. I was very familiar with folks from Apollo at one point a long time ago. So pretty cool overlap. What your role as general manager of B2B, just explain a little bit to our listeners what that entails. Is this the sales teams reporting to you? Is it about technology? Is it about strategy? Is it all of the above? I just want to make sure everyone understands what that means.
Yeah, sure. It's sort of all of the above.
Mm-hmm.
To be successful, to ensure that manufacturers, distributors are successful on our platform, we have to make sure, first of all, that we have the right go-to-market, that we're obviously attracting them to the platform. Then once we have them, that we're building the right product, that's meeting their needs. And then that we're servicing them. Do we have the right support models? Are we working with the right agencies, etc.? And so we, as a team, as a B2B team, are holistically thinking about that entire journey for those manufacturers and distributors, and ensuring that we're building the strategy and then implementing the strategy that's going to make them successful when they're moving their businesses online.
I think BigCommerce is moving only to one agency called Trellis. I've heard this rumor. There's just one. I think they got rid of all the other relationships.
I'll
have to check with our agency team, but that may be true.
They have a great agency program with Daniel Furtig, but yeah, it's I think that the agency partnership program is definitely blossoming, and I know like people are really excited about the partner event. What was it, a few months ago? I think everyone, you know, kind of came down to Austin. I think a lot of people were kind of really excited about everything that was going on. But yeah, I mean, tell us a little bit about you guys obviously have doubled down on B2B. What are some of the kind of new or forward-looking things that you see, you know, coming soon, or maybe have just happened?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we think about both retail and B2B e-commerce across kind of 5 imperatives. You know, these are things you have to do to be successful in e-commerce. Firstly, attracting merchants. And I mentioned Feedonomics. It's the best platform for doing that. Whether you're trying to sell D2C as a manufacturer and sending product data through to Amazon, or you've got adverts on Google, it is proven to increase return on ad spend. It is a fantastic platform, and so we have the best in breed, built-in, ready for you to use in Feedonomics. Once you've attracted those customers, you need to engage them, right? And so as a B2B team, we are building technologies and making it as simple as possible for our merchants to build great buyer workflows. What do I mean by that? We sort of think of e-commerce as transcending transactions in B2B. In B2C, if you're online, every transaction it's just really about getting a product into a cart and checking out. That's what it's about. I want to convert. If you're on my site, I need you to convert. That's not quite true in B2B. There's a lot more to it. These are long-term relationships, much higher average order value. And so actually the e-commerce site becomes about a lot more. It's about managing that relationship, right? Tracking orders that were placed, you know, in a warehouse or over the phone, or maybe through EDI. And so what we've built is a front end, a buyer portal, we call it, where the buyer can manage all of their interactions with the merchant. And it's not replacing any of those interactions that happen today, but it's creating an omni-channel experience. And so if I am a buyer and I place an order with the sales team, I should be able to log in to the e-commerce site, track that order, pay the invoice, and do all of that in a very seamless manner. And we're really focused on doing that. And our brand new buyer portal that we released in May brings all of that into any manufacturer distributor's e-commerce site. So we've attracted, we've engaged. We do have to try and convert, right? And so we do want to sell online. That is probably why we moved our business online. And we have an open checkout that does that. Right, so you can use the payment methods that you want. You can add terms. You can have ACH vaulting, L2, L3 credit card data for those here in the US. Right, that is an open source checkout that you can build how you like if you really want to. But out of the box, it converts incredibly highly, and you have the ability to control the payment methods that your buyers can purchase with, right? Matching what they would get when they pick up the phone and speak to the sales team. That's all the kind of fun stuff. As we get to the more nitty gritty of it, you have to operate, right? And so I mentioned flexible, open APIs that are scalable. We're really focused there. We're never going to close those down. Try not to rate limit anyone. And so you can hammer those APIs, right? These huge, you've got potentially, if you're in automotive, you've got aces and pies, you've got millions of SKUs, right? That's a lot of data to transfer. And so you need to be able to do that. And then finally, and this I think actually for me, as I speak to manufacturers, distributors, is one of the most exciting advancements in our platform. Merchants want to expand. That could be selling into new regions. It could be developing new brands. It could be going D2C if you're a manufacturer. And we built what we call multi-storefront technology. And that enables you to have multiple storefronts on top of one integration to an ERP. It's in really, really powerful technology. And so if you're a manufacturer and you want to go D2C, it becomes easy to spin up a storefront that is your direct-to-consumer business while still having a business-focused site that has quotes and invoices and everything that you'd expect. And so that's where we've really focused, honing in on those 5 imperatives and how do we build the best technology to enable our merchants, to attract merchants, to engage them, to convert them, to expand their businesses, and of course, to keep operating, connecting into the ERP, the OMS, the CRM.
What I would just mention is the buyer portal part. You know, the folks that I've been working with really noticed the difference. And it's interesting because, you know, maybe I was thinking about other things, maybe I was focusing on other things, but the buyer portal, you know, piece, and as he said, updated just in May, you know, folks are really excited to have, you know, more there. They were looking for more. They had maybe thought they had to customize, you know, in various ways in order to get what they wanted, and now they're getting it. So, you know, that I have to give you some praise. There are many, many other things, but I heard that from clients almost immediately.
I appreciate that. One of the things that, and we hear this a lot, I think you'll both attest, we hear B2B buyers want a B2C-like experience. I always wonder, what does that really mean? Do we really want a B2C-like experience when I'm, you know, when I'm purchasing widgets that are going to help build some machinery? I'm not sure about that. And actually, what we've built is a separate workflow. I think what we really want and buyers want is a process that's as efficient as it is in B2C, but it's not necessarily like B2C, and we really appreciate that. And so our team, as we built that buyer portal, did 40 merchant interviews, sat down with manufacturers, distributors. What does the workflow look like? Help us understand. And so we built that portal very specifically for B2B buyers, make it as easy as possible, right, to check out. And I always like this kind of stat. If you think about when I'm making purchases on behalf of BigCommerce, the number one thing I care about is efficiency, right? If I can be faster, more efficient, quicker, that is good for me. I can then spend that time with my wife, with my dog, with my cat, rather than at work, right? But that's not true when I'm purchasing on, you know, on Amazon. The death scroll keeps me going as I'm searching for products. I think that's, you know, that's what we've kind of built into the heart of that buyer portal, is understanding.
A big mistake that people make, which is that, you know, yes, you want it to be more like B2C or easy to use, but B2B buyers are buying for their jobs, right? And so they're buying for, you know, the necessity of the purpose of whatever they're trying to accomplish. And usually they want that to be efficient and, you know, handle some procurement compliance issue. Like, there's usually other factors that play into what makes that efficient for them, right? It has to be on their payment terms, or, you know, maybe the
approvals
complex. Yeah, there may be approvals. So you have all these different levels of complexity I think, you know, it's more about efficiency and less about like a fun experience. I think in B2C, it's like more, I mean, yes, sometimes you're buying because you have to, but I think a lot of people buying in B2C are like, they actually are enjoying shopping around and probably not enjoying it as much in B2B as my guess.
I think, you know, and then you could tell us what you think about this, Lance. So one of the things our guests have brought up, you know, over the episodes too, it's exactly, you know, what Isaiah was saying, but it's also the ability to do things. It's the efficiency, but like, I do it on my phone, right? I want to be able to, I do things on my phone as a B2C, you know, person, and guess what? I'm doing B2B. I want to also do stuff on my phone. And they were prevented from doing, you know, things in that way when they're on a job site, you know, or something. And that was just completely inefficient, or at a distributor, or, you know, on the floor of their warehouse. And they're like, no, I have to go back to do X at my desktop, or have my laptop with me. And, you know, that has, thank goodness, changed. But I think that's also part of it, where people say, I want it to be like B2C. It's because, you know, I want to be able to have a mobile experience as well.
Yeah, that efficiency, 100%. That definitely reads through to B2B, and we've seen that with a lot of our merchants. We've got a manufacturer of chimney parts. They build a specific app that helps the independent contractors that are installing that chimney order parts from the roof. That's, you know, that's the tagline. That's how they're selling it, and it really does. And it's being powered in the back end by BigCommerce. And to your point, which I think is really interesting, you know, in B2C, that buyer journey is generally reasonably simple. I mean, you've got lots of touch points, but it can be a lot simpler. Whereas in B2B, I think manufacturers and distributors really have to think about what are their buyers doing? How do they want to purchase? I was speaking, actually, Isaiah, you mentioned our partner summit, BigCommerce's partner summit. I had Twin Liquors on stage with me. They're a liquor distributor here in Texas, a pretty large one. And they're building e-commerce, but they're not building a site with all the bells and whistles. They just want to build a simple order form, because their buyers are placing orders at midnight as they're walking out of a bar, and they want it to be as simple and easy as possible, right? And you would never see that on Amazon, or if you go on their B2C site, it's, you know, beautiful imagery, excellent descriptions of all of the products. B2B site, everyone knows what Tito's vodka is. We don't need to tell them, especially if they work in a bar. We just need them to make it as easy as possible for them to place the order. And I think that's often missed when we're talking to manufacturers, distributors. You know, they go straight to wanting, you know, all the bells and whistles.
Yeah, they want the nice design, which is like kind of defeats the purpose of.
Yeah, exactly. And we're always kind of advising businesses, sit down with your customers, understand their pain points. And from that, you'll get a much better understanding of where you should focus your time and energy as maybe you think about moving online. And you know, do you need everything? Is it a crawl, walk, run strategy? How do you take bites of that apple to build that e-commerce site that your buyers are going to use?
I think you brought up something interesting though, but you know, in this particular example of the liquor company, I mean, there are though B2B companies that really need photos and videos, you know, for B2B transactions. And it's the same sort of field example I'm saying about mobile. It's like, you know, I want to take a picture or something, this part or what have you, and then be able to know that I'm getting exactly that part without knowing the model number necessarily. I mean, so having even the technology, you know, taking that role now and helping people out, figure out like, what is this? How do I get it? All right, I have the photo. Here's the photo. I'm getting this matched. You know, that's also important today.
100%. To your point, that buyer portal that we've just built, it's mobile responsive. So you know, you don't, as a merchant, as you're implementing, you don't have to worry about making the interaction to check, you know, order status or quotes or invoices mobile friendly. It's out of the box. You don't have to worry about that. And so, yeah, we've really focused on exactly as you're saying, the same as I do when I'm shopping on Amazon or on Walmart or Target. I'm doing it from everywhere. Actually, I don't remember the last time I actually made a purchase on a laptop. I don't know. Do you guys? I never purchase on my laptop anymore. It's on my phone.
I do. Yeah, it's all on my phone, but I'm always carrying my laptop around when I'm visiting clients and stuff. So it's kind of, you know, it's one of these things where I do use it. But yeah, I mean, it's mostly on my phone for myself, almost everything.
I definitely use Apple Pay a lot on my phone. Like I noticed that I'm using it a lot more than I used to, especially it's on more things, right? It's more accessible. So, so what do you think is some of the resistance to this? I mean, we hear a lot that it's coming from the sales side or the sales reps, or, you know, companies don't want to, you know, automate, and then there's no relationships because they're just logging into the buyer portal and they're not talking to the sales reps. Like, is that kind of some of the criticism you're hearing, or some of the restraint you're hearing from moving forward, or what do you?
Yeah, we hear that all the time. You know, the sales team aren't on board. We're going to have channel conflict, and we can get into a lot more detail around channel conflict with distributors as well, especially if you're a manufacturer going direct to consumer. But specifically on the sales team, we often hear that pushback. You know, today the relationships are working. Why change it? If it ain't broke, don't try and fix it. But the truth is, you know, your competitors are doing this, and there's a reason they're doing it, because a salesperson should not be picking up the phone to answer a question about the delivery time for an order. That should be visible online. Or they shouldn't be answering the phone to pay an invoice, right? That should all be done online. Anything that can be self-serve should be made self-serve. And that will free up the sales team to spend more time on bringing in new companies, which most salespeople, when you speak to them, that's what they enjoy doing. They want to be out there speaking to people, meeting them in person. They don't want to be, dealing with manual data entry. But convincing them of that can be difficult. And we've seen merchants use a number of different tactics here. The one I really, really like, though, is of course, if you own that customer and they place through e-commerce, you should still get commission for that sale. But what was interesting, because you are generating efficiencies as a business, you can actually potentially give more commission for sales that come through that e-commerce channel, which I think is really, really interesting. And so if you model out the impact that, sit down with the sales team, how much time are you spending on the phone, taking orders, answering questions about shipments, paying invoicing, that's efficiency gain that they can spend bringing in new business. And you can actually then potentially pay higher commissions for orders that come through that e-commerce channel. And that, I think, really, really helps. And my sales team, the sales team here at BigCommerce, probably won't enjoy me saying this, but you can incentivize sales folks to do anything. They will find the maximum payout for the cheapest effort. And e-commerce is the cheapest effort. It is the easiest. You just have to convince them of it, I think. And I think we're slowly getting over that hump, I think.
Have you seen anyone do that successfully? Do you have any, I'm not sure if you're allowed to share, but do you know anyone that's done that?
I can't exactly share the names, but yeah, a very, very large manufacturer of a kind of electronic equipment on BigCommerce, kind of the $5 to $10 billion in revenue range. They've done exactly that. And they effectively have said, we'll pay you more, but we're mandating that you have to start using the e-commerce channel. But to incentivize it, we're gonna pay higher commissions because they want the customers on that channel. They know that it will deliver operational benefits and that the sales team will become more efficient. And so they're doing exactly that at a very large scale. They're a big conglomerate.
Have they been able to? They've seen results, or?
Oh yeah. So when they came to BigCommerce, they were doing effectively $0 online, and this year they'll hit 100 million odd online, and next year that's going to double again.
Wow.
Yeah, and they can project that pretty efficiently because they know they're putting the incentives in place to make it happen.
Yeah.
Right. And so and their sales team are along for the ride. They love it.
It's nice to hear the larger businesses doing this, because I'm aware of smaller businesses that have been doing it for a while successfully, just like changing the commission model and moving things forward and getting it rocking. And now that the larger ones are really doing it and getting success. That's great. That's really excellent.
That is one of the things that scares me a little bit about this market. And one of the things that worries me about this transformation, let's say over the next decade, is that I think some of the smaller companies may be too slow to adapt to this. And actually I'm seeing some of the innovation happening more on the larger side, just because it's coming from executives, maybe M&As that have, or finance people that see this kind of transition and they're kind of strategically mandating it. And I think some of the smaller companies are kind of neglecting the change a little bit there. And what scares me is that what happens when, all the big guys are doing it super well, and these little guys, like, it's going to be really hard for them to catch up, and we've already seen a lot of the rich get richer in this in the last 20 years. Big companies just getting bigger, so nervous that there could be this like big consolidation, and we'll see. But
yeah, I think we are going to see some of that. Of course, BigCommerce, we work with manufacturers, distributors from a couple of $1 million all the way up to hundreds of millions into the billions of dollars, and we see the transition happening across from small to large. But I do think you're right that a lot of that transition is being driven at the upper end, whereas the smaller companies, maybe family owned, there's more resistance. It's a larger cost. Again, it's the if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I do think you're right. Going back to my days at Apollo, we are going to see more consolidation, and the private equity funds are circling, and we're definitely seeing that they're licking their lips.
Yeah, right. They can go buy up 20 of these family businesses, consolidate them, digitize them, and sell it for 100 times more, you know, or whatever.
Put them on BigCommerce, of course, and do it through.
What is interesting is that there are a number of there's a sort of a manufacturing hub that's relatively close to where I am in New York. It was incentivized by all kinds of tax, you know, dollars and what have you over the years. There are hundreds of small manufacturers there, and I've worked for a number of them. So it's a very interesting community, like a microcosm of what's going on. And a lot of them have done very well with B2B e-commerce, but it's interesting that, you know, coming from all these different perspectives, because I think that the ones that were really small, like very small family businesses, it's exactly what you were saying, Lance, that they did not really, it was harder for them to adapt, or took longer to figure this out, or they haven't done it yet. The ones that are kind of somewhere in that middle, you know, they're not 1 million and they're not 100 million, you know, they're just somewhere in that zone in the middle, maybe 10, maybe 20. They have been moving forward relatively, you know, quickly. Maybe it's that they want to be sold, you know, they want to be acquired and consolidate with something else, or maybe they just realize that this is how they're going to survive and grow. But it's kind of that interesting middle where, in my experience, they have really started to embrace and move forward.
Yeah, we've got a fantastic example of that, actually. A company called Styco. They're a manufacturer of. They're up in the New York area, actually. They're a manufacturer of antenna for emergency vehicles. We're doing absolutely nothing online. Came to BigCommerce with an agency, and actually with the manufacturing extension partnerships. I don't know how familiar you are with that, but they came to BigCommerce through those connections, and now they are online and they are taking quotes through their online business and seeing that channel really grow. And so I think you're right at the lower end. There's more resistance, but in the middle, because I kind of mentioned it at the top, you know, with BigCommerce, we really think we're not a monolith. We're trying to kind of democratize that e-commerce. I think that's true for B2B as well. You know, we can power the small site and the very, very large site and everything in between. And it's you know, it isn't too prohibitively expensive to get online. What you have to sort of get over is the idea that you have to build Amazon to be successful. You don't. You can get your products online and you can have a cart and a checkout and some quotes. And actually, that isn't going to be all that difficult to get up and running. And that's exactly what they did and are being very successful with it.
Excellent.
The middle is very interesting. I think there's a lot of potential innovation there. I think we're seeing kind of some that are moving really fast and really, you know, moving ahead. And then you have some that are kind of, you know, stagnating and kind of taking their time on this, you know, this change. What else do you guys see in terms of, you know, resistance or challenges? You know, we also see some challenges with ERP and legacy ERP integrations and back office processes that, you know, it's hard to get people to change something they've been doing for a long time. Is that another challenge you guys encounter a lot? Yeah,
that's definitely a big challenge. Often the move to e-commerce and an ERP migration go hand in hand. There's a lot of ERPs out there, you know, that were custom built for a specific segment, and they aren't, you know, they don't have APIs. They don't work well with e-commerce. You're going to struggle to connect directly in. And so, yeah, we find that they go hand in hand, whether you're moving, you know, to a NetSuite or to an Acumatica, etc. A platform that does have maybe even a pre-built connector that will connect straight into the e-commerce platform. But yeah, ERPs are definitely a tricky one. There are still ERPs that crop up when I'm talking to merchants that I've never heard of in weird and wonderful sectors, you know, built specifically, and even in some cases, custom ERPs. You know, this is something that my uncle built because back in, you know, 1980, and it still works today. You have to convince them. I'm not sure that's going to work very well with an e-commerce site. Maybe you need to, you know, move on to a more modern solution.
We're seeing a lot of the same thing, and I think that's why B2B still has such a long way to go, is because you have this complex back office kind of ERP process that's driving a lot of this. and a lot of it, you know, hasn't been updated in 5, 10, 20 years, or the systems themselves aren't very good for e-commerce, so they're hard to kind of make work from an e-commerce perspective. So, and then it also adds a lot of cost to the project, right? If they have to do both, you know, it's potentially a huge project versus like in D2C or retail, you know, they may only just have to do the e-commerce project. It's a lot more straightforward.
Yeah, I think one of the other areas we see is often payments as well. That can be you know, offering terms, being able to offer terms. You want to sell online, but you don't want to take credit cards because you don't want to pay the fees. Do you have that flexibility on your e-commerce platform to support all of that? If the answer is no, then it does hinder the progression to move online, because you don't want someone coming and placing a $10,000, $20,000 order on a credit card, and it's a 3% fee that you're then gonna have to pay. And so that kind of being able to utilize the payment partner, payment processor of choice, and then enable the payment methods for specific customers that you want them to be able to use, and offer them the same terms. I think that's really, really important too. And we need to, as an industry, I think we're slowly pulling that online, but it's taking time, I think, for those payments. I think the majority of, sorry, go on.
Yeah, we see that, and I think pricing is another one where the pricing might be really complicated in the ERP, and it's not so easy to integrate that over, because, you know, it might be some company specific pricing, and if you try and integrate, you know, 100,000 price lists or whatever, that could be, you know, in some cases it's not even a price list, it's like some weird algorithm the ERP has. So that's where I think headless or some sort of kind of head, you know, we're doing stuff like that where they may need to just display the price from the ERP. But you're right. I mean, if you don't get the right price, you don't get the right payment method. And I think delivery is the other one, right? If the LTL, or they can't give you good information around the shipping costs or the delivery, those are all kind of barriers. And then I think then that's why people call in, right? Because they call in, or they, you know, communicate with a human because they can get the real price, or they get the real delivery.
Well, I mean, I'll see what you think of this as well, Lance. But, you know, I always think of that as a bit, one of the big fails of a lot of businesses is that the idea that they say, well, our people call, and it's like, well, why are they calling? You know, can you please tell me why they're calling? Are they calling because they want to buy things that they can't buy on the site? Are they calling because there was a problem with shipping? Are they calling because they have payment questions? It's like, those are all fails. Those are opportunities for you to fix things and to make them more efficient, make information clearer, you know, whatever it is, right? Fill in the blank. You should never be proud that you're getting so many phone calls, you know, to your business, unless everyone's saying, you know, I want to buy more, you know. I don't know what you would be proud of otherwise.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And it kind of circles back to, you know, all of these offline processes that are manual need to, you know, they do need to move online. And to your point, Isaiah, it still astounds me when I speak to a merchant who has 100,000, 200,000 price lists. Every single customer gets a different price, and maybe even in different locations for the same buyer has a different price. They placed a quote 10 years ago, and so that price is still the price they pay. It just, you know, that sort of complexity lives down in the ERP, or maybe in a CPQ tool, and you've got to connect that to the e-commerce site to make that work. Because we actually did a buyer survey. We surveyed just over 1,000 B2B buyers, and asked them what were their number one pain points when they got, one, not having the payment types, and two, not being able to see the accurate shipping information. The two biggest pain points. And it's not a surprise, right? If the pricing isn't correct and accurate to what you will get when you pick up the phone and speak to the salesperson, you are not placing that order online, right?
So I'm going to just say two things to our listeners. You know, tiered pricing is one of those, right? Tiered pricing is something that works for a lot of people in B2B, and there could be a lot of tiers. You know, it doesn't have to mean that there are three, you know, but there's no reason to have 100,000 unique prices for whatever it is you're doing. There's no reason anymore. I'm just going to say that. If somebody wants to challenge me, I will have a death match with them, and we'll go from there. But that's one thing. And the second thing is about payments. You mentioned about the fees for credit cards and all of that. Another thing that a lot of people I've worked with in B2B realize is that, there are sometimes you're adding in enough revenue by offering credit cards for certain sales, that it compensates entirely for having those fees. And also, depending on the type of credit card arrangements you have, you're getting points or percents back that pay for all of those fees. So never ever just out of the box say, I don't want offer credit card payment. Never do that. Never. You have to investigate this further. I know for a fact businesses that make a lot more money than they would have otherwise simply by offering credit cards for B2B e-commerce.
Well, it's a convenience factor, right? If I can pay by credit card as a customer, maybe I want to buy more now or buy more frequently because I know I can get points and I don't have to pay cash.
Exactly. And people forget that because they think that it's the 3% fee and I can't do it, right? Or whatever, right?
And you can negotiate, right? I mean, 3% I think is on the higher end. If you're doing enough volume, you might be able to get 2%, right?
Even with Amex, you can do better. So again, people should just consider that. I just wanted to put this out there for our listeners, Lance.
You're spot on, and the important point there, I really think, is being able to control that. You see, for certain orders, your buyers want to pay on credit card. It's a smaller order, ease and efficiency. Let them do it. Exactly. You have to let the buyer use the payment method type that they want and offer them the terms, the credit card or ACH at the point of the checkout. But you should be able to control that to ensure that it's that you're maximizing that conversion and at the point that the item is in that cart. I do want to say, I think is a little bit of a mic drop moment there. You're telling all the manufacturers and distributors out there they should no longer have 100,000 price list. I like that.
You can no longer do it, and if you want to talk to me about it, give a call. You can't do it any longer.
I'm wondering, there's probably some math there that the management and the loss of margin because it's not being controlled very well. Maybe even the frustration that someone finds out they're getting a different price than another customer. There's probably so many negative effects of having this kind of overly complicated pricing mechanism, is my guess, that especially if you're trying to manually update that, it sounds like, potentially just a lot of manual manpower, that's not efficient,
without naming the company, because they would come and smack me. There was a company I work with that had a similar situation, and I was really dumbfounded the amount of work and the number of people that they put into maintaining that particular system, and the grief that the customer service team always got, and the sales team was always confused by it. It's like, which list from which year for which client? It was mayhem. I mean, you probably had a team bigger than the entire staff at Trellis, working on figuring this stuff out at this business, and I'm not exaggerating. And so, from my perspective, it's like, guys, you know what? We're gonna just move away from this, and we're never gonna look back. It's not gonna work again.
I mean, we are seeing more algorithmic pricing. So the ERPs, the problem is that algorithmic pricing still may be company specific. So that does pose a challenge of how do you integrate that into the e-com platform? And
yes,
we find probably the best way to do it is just to display the pricing from the ERP, but you're talking about more of a headless. It doesn't actually have to be headless without headless, where it can be a non-headless site that does that, but you're still kind of building a feature that's kind of more or less headless. That it's a more complicated feature to build, which can be prohibitive.
Yeah, I think that's true, but I think this is an Isaiah pain point. I might be wrong. I think we've discussed this before, but how frequently pricing needs to be updated? Does your e-commerce site need to be updated with new pricing every 10 seconds? Every minute, every 2 minutes? And the majority of businesses, unless you're selling commodities, the answer to that question is generally no. But convincing a manufacturer or distributor that is the case is often pretty difficult. We find, at least.
It's not so much that they're changing it so often. It's that the volume of data and trying to synchronize it between the two systems becomes so overwhelming that it's almost easier to just display it versus kind of syncing the data. So yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing that they're not necessarily changing it too much, but some guys, they might say, okay, we're changing it not across all customers, but some customers getting a change every day. So that's part of the problem, right? Is that they might have, 20,000 customers, and that 3 customers per day get a change, right? And so technically every day it is changing, and that's a challenge they have to figure out. So,
And go ahead, Lance.
Yeah, and we have businesses on BigCommerce, metals suppliers. They are updating their pricing. It's live, right? It is live pricing. Sure. It's coming straight from the ERP. But to your point, Isaiah, that pricing maybe updates once a day, but you can pull that overnight and it's ready for the next day potentially, or just update, the 3 customer lists.
Yeah, there are ways to make the integration less painful, but I do think that's still a little bit of a barrier, and people underestimate like the architecture around like that process, right? Like, what's the best way to do it for their use case? We have to, like, as in this industry, they can go out and get a bunch of quotes, and they might get someone that gives them kind of a lowball quote, and they're kind of underestimating the value of doing pricing correctly, delivery correctly, building the right features to get, momentum, versus just going with like the cheap quote. Because, if you go get 10 agency quotes, you can go get a cheap quote for any project. You know what I mean? Like you probably won't get.
I'll beat any price. I'll beat any price.
It probably won't get done very well, and it probably won't handle the pricing correctly. But that's one of those barriers, is people don't really understand. There is still some architectural complexity to doing all that well.
Don't get 10 agency quotes.
No, do not get.
People are doing it. Unfortunately, that is happening for sure.
That's another mic drop, by the way. Do not.
Well, I think
10 agency quotes.
I think that some of that is getting simplified by these I think that what will help the industry is the relationships you guys are building with Acumatica, with NetSuite, and going deeper into these ERPs. So some of the stuff can be, we work a lot with Celigo. A lot of this has been solved already.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's still work to be done to solve some of the B2B use cases better with the integrations, but more and more getting solved.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on there, which is, our view is that there should, if we can, there should be like a reference connector out of the box. So for Acumatica, we have a native connector. For NetSuite, we have a connector that's in their store. But for a lot of for B2B businesses, a lot of those processes can be custom and a custom built, and they have their own. And so, there has to be something on top, and you need to be able to change it. And it's like you said, you work with the Celigos of the world, the Del Boomies, the iPasses out there to build the connectivity in the way you need it. And that's the joy of having, an open architecture where you can, pull that API, call that API from wherever you like to do whatever you need in the bespoke process that you've built. And for B2B, I think that's really, really important, because those customizations that we see are weird and wonderful. But you need your e-commerce site to be able to cope with it, right? I mentioned that the chimney manufacturer. You take your picture when you're on top of the roof and from the app, and you made the purchase on the app, and it, piece arrives next day, and you're ready to install it.
Commercial, they need like a video of that.
They're
an Acumatica customer actually as well.
Nice.
I like that. So I was going to ask a slightly different question, but we all know that B2B e-commerce is growing, for small, medium-sized, and large businesses. But what percent of your business, if you could say this, is now the BigCommerce between B2B and B2C? And how is that ratio being managed, and how are people thinking about this internally? I mean, just talk a tiny bit about that, whatever you can share.
Yeah, for sure. So today, about just over a third of our business is B2B in total. That's back book plus new business, but new business leans a lot more heavily towards B2B, getting up above 40%.
Sure.
And that's increasing, and I think it's just because of the platform that we've built in terms of a SaaS platform that really caters to the needs of those manufacturers and distributors. We're having just a huge amount of success and closing deals with some very, very large B2B businesses and helping them move off their custom platform. Actually, we've got a new customer that we're bringing onto BigCommerce now, very large, billions of dollars in revenue, moving off their old custom, been around for 10 years, and they're bringing them onto BigCommerce. But in terms of how we manage that, we have a dedicated B2B team, dedicated B2B engineering and product resourcing, and all they do all day is think about how do we build product for manufacturers and distributors. And they get on the phone with our customers, interview them, understand the processes, so that they can then go and design the next iteration of our B2B edition. And, so for us, that's, of course, we've gone, I don't know, maybe 40 minutes without mentioning AI. It's how are we going to pull AI in for B2B? Our team is working on that right now. Some really, really interesting use cases that they're building right now. How do we build tools for the sales teams? Specific dashboards for them. Interviewing those sales teams. What would make your life easier when you're servicing your buyers through e-commerce? And so it's really, it's a really exciting time, I think, just to be in B2B, generally B2B e-commerce, but also for BigCommerce as we continue to really, I think, lead with the product, build just fantastic product that meets the needs of those manufacturers and distributors out there.
I'm actually an AI generated co-host, so thank you for bringing up the AI. I hope everyone is enjoying this experience. It's took a lot of work on the part of many technologists, but here I am. So sorry.
Well, I made the joke before we got on that, episode 200, if you get there, it's going to be AI, right? So it'll be you just be able to produce it. It'll be so fast.
I mean, I'll just share this because it's B2B related, but there was a client I was talking to recently, and they asked about how they could AI generate iterations of all of their product imagery. Like, and I'll exaggerate this, but for example, showing it indoors and outdoors, showing it in use here, showing it in use there, and just laying in all the prompts and then go. And so they have people working on that right now because it's something that, they were doing very manually, until very recently. And now it's like, we got way too many components to deal with. How do we do this? And so it's like the real piece with a real photo now inserted into many.
I think it'll get there. There's already some innovation there around like the 3D modeling, 3D imaging. So I think that kind of stuff will definitely start to get more and more automated. So
I think product AI is huge. If you're an automotive retailer selling auto parts, and you've got hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of SKUs, how do you write your own product descriptions for that? You don't. You'll be training the model to write in your style and your flair of your business, and it is going to pump out and this is probably maybe a step too far, but your customer, you understand the text that they like to engage with. Maybe you even have customer specific product descriptions and product images. I use this example. My favorite color is orange. Maybe I log onto the site and there's tinges of orange everywhere, to personalize it for me. I think we're a ways away from that, but we are not a ways away from having, product descriptions written by AI in someone's specific style.
For our listeners, people aren't looking at this. Lance just said he likes orange, but he's wearing white in a white room. Where is the orange, Lance? Where is the orange?
There's a poster behind me with some orange in it.
One little poster, nice.
Just wanted to point that out.
I think that some of these gaps, like every year, they're going to get easier, faster, right? Like pricing, as ERPs modernize, the integrations get easier, pricing will get easier to integrate, product data will get easier to manage. We didn't really talk a lot about delivery, like delivery costs, and delivery was another hurdle that people mentioned. What are are people having success with things like Shipper HQ, which is like kind of like a logistics kind of SaaS platform, or what are kind of some of the solutions you guys are seeing that works well?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Shipper HQ is a fantastic partner of BigCommerce, and there are obviously other solutions out there. But I think I touched on it in that buyer report. Number 2 reason for kind of leaving that checkout: can't see accurate shipping information and costs. And it's true. And if you get through to the checkout, I'm the same when I purchase, not on behalf of BigCommerce, when I'm purchasing myself. If I get through that checkout and I can't see how much that delivery is going to cost and when it's going to arrive, I leave the checkout. It's even more true in B2B, right? You're ordering mission critical products that you need to know when they're going to arrive. And so getting that
is a miss that people don't really think about, and they don't put a lot of attention into trying to programmatically show people when things are going to arrive.
And also, you know, a buy online, pick up in store, or obviously will call, as we'd call it, kind of more in B2B. Okay, I can have this delivered, it'll be here in 2 days, or I can pick it up from that warehouse that's 2 hours from where I currently am. Oh, I'll go and do that, and I can see it's in stock because I can see the inventory, right? And so, and you know, on BigCommerce, we have our we call BOPIS APIs for B2B. They're the will call APIs. So you can see that inventory, place that order, and then go and pick it up. And that's really, really important, right? Or maybe even choose which warehouse it's going to be delivered from, which will have a different cost, but also have a different delivery time, right? That's really important, I think, to be able to provide that level of granularity in the checkout. And that technology, we're there with the technology is there. I think merchants are slow to pick that up and realize the importance of it.
Makes sense. So we're my screen is like blurred from the sun, so I can't see the time, but we're getting close to
getting close, yeah.
Yeah. So I'd love to hear kind of any you know, further, you know, I think it's interesting to kind of break through the noise of like manufacturers and distributors are kind of the 2 main core hosts of B2B, right? But I also think you're going to see some on the retail or CPG side. I mean, I guess you could kind of call them a manufacturer, but they're kind of more of a brands. Maybe they don't really manufacture, but they get it. I mean, I see that also expanding into B2B because they realize, you know, it doesn't make sense to just be pure D2C anymore. They have to build these retail partnerships, and why not automate that on? Like, are you guys getting more business through that too as well, or?
Yeah, 100%. We see it from both sides. So, you know, manufacturers who only sold through distributors, then selling direct to consumer. We've got a fantastic example of Merchant Hauser Sinks, who does that on BigCommerce. They sell on Amazon, but you'll find them in Home Depot. They were selling just B2B, and now have built out that D2C channel. But you're 100% right. The reverse is also true, right? Margins have got tighter, and those kind of CPG manufacturers, to your point, right? But they're direct to consumer businesses, are exploring that wholesale channel, right? How can I grow through wholesale? And you're exactly right. We're finding merchants come to BigCommerce saying, okay, I need to build not just my D2C site, but also my wholesale store. How can I do that? What does that involve? What do I need to think about as I'm building out that channel? And on our platform, I mentioned that multi-storefront. You know, you can have your B2C, D2C store controlled and all of the product information fed from one backend. And so it's really simple to just spin up that new store that's your wholesale channel, and then direct you know, your wholesale customers to there to be able to buy product and start selling. Yeah, it's a big one.
I posted recently, and I'm curious to hear what you think, but I feel like the distributors really have to start innovating because, you know, they're that middleman, right? And if the manufacturers are going to start going more direct, or maybe going direct to the major retailers like Amazon or Walmart or whatever, and then the CPG firms are doing more wholesale themselves, where does the distributor live in this, right? And how do they stay competitive or unique, right? And I think they're going to have to really kind of build digitize, like operationalize themselves. Because I think just saying, hey, call me on the phone is probably that's not going to be a very competitive strategy for too much longer.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think distributors, and I've got to be, we have lots of very fantastic, very successful distributors on BigCommerce, but a lot of the value add was the sales team, product information, and then product availability, right? And to your point, I think distributors, that product availability is now that main value add. Can you get me the product I need today, tomorrow, when I need it, right? At the price that I'm willing to pay. And that's where distributors can still play, I think, a really key part in that equation, because the manufacturer doesn't necessarily have the warehouse that's near you that can get you the product, and doesn't necessarily, and isn't there on the ground where you are. And so there is a key part to play, but I think the value add is shifting a little bit, I think, towards, as you were kind of alluding to there, the kind of the operational aspect of the business.
And we've talked about this a little bit on our podcast before, but I think one of the other things that comes into play is that, everyone knows insurance agents, real estate agents, which are in fact distributors of a sort, right? They're middle people, right? And the same thing with there are all a variety of roles like this that are somehow in the middle. Car dealers, are in the middle between Ford and the consumer, this sort of thing. So it's really understanding exactly what you're providing in that middle to really make it work. And, and also hopefully not having to put in like legal protections and all of that like Tesla, for example, had to break through, in order to go direct to consumer, because laws required that there be a dealer in order to sell cars. I mean, a lot of people don't even know that, but it's required by law, in many places in the country, right? So the distributors have to figure this out and make sure that they're doing exactly what they should be in order to make everybody happy on both ends. It has to be both ways. If they're not making both sides happy, then people aren't going to go.
Product discovery and product availability, I think you got to bring that online, right? If I can't go and log in and see all the products, the availability, the deliverability dates, the pricing, I'm going to probably go to another distributor that can show me that on a website, right? Or has a better experience, so I don't have to call it, because maybe I want to look that up at 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. and the sales rep's not available, right? And so
yeah, exactly. I think we haven't touched on it yet, but one of the interesting things that we're seeing is the evolution of marketplaces for that, in particular in automotive. You're seeing a little bit more of those, the manufacturer wanting to have those dealers on a marketplace on their site. So, you are getting matched to the dealer on the manufacturer's site. And we're seeing that elsewhere too, with, aftermarket parts distributors having being invited into a marketplace, an owned marketplace on a manufacturer's site. And I think that's a really interesting progression, but I don't think we quite know how that's going to fully play out as everyone kind of figures out what are they going to do with those marketplaces. But it's very, very very interesting and potentially pretty disruptive to the distributors, depending on how the manufacturer of those products decides to go about it.
That's
a real channel conflict.
So much power in those hands that, depending on what they do, that could, they have to be ready to adapt or kind of be nimble.
So Lance,
yeah, exactly.
I want to give you the last word, so to speak. So tell us, how do people reach you? How do they become clients of BigCommerce and B2B? I mean, just go for it. Tell us a little bit more for our listeners.
Yeah, sure. So connect with me on LinkedIn. It's Lance Owide. And if you're interested in learning more about BigCommerce, Google BigCommerce B2B, or check us out at bigcommerce.com, and we'll be happy to show you the platform. If you're a manufacturer, distributor out there thinking, how do I get online? Or maybe you're already online, but you're not happy with your platform and you want to grow, we're the right choice for you. So check us out.
Excellent elevator pitch. Thank you very much, Lance. I really appreciate it. Isaiah?
Yeah, no, that was great. Really appreciate you coming on, and we like to have BigCommerce come on every so often because there's always like, you guys are always doing new stuff, the buyer portal, new partnerships, the multi-store is still relatively new, the multi-location, buy online, pick up in store. So I'm sure if we have you guys back in 6 months or a year, it'll be a ton of new stuff to discuss,
We've got a dedicated team just cranking that product out. Thank you so much for having me on, guys. As I said, I'm a huge fan of the podcast, so thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thanks, Lance.